Welcome back to the Unlock Your Potential podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about intuition versus ego, also known as higher self versus lower self. This is something that is a part of ourselves, both our intuition and our ego. They play a part in who we are. The ego is not a bad thing. It's natural. It helps us in many ways. It can help us in many ways, but it can also hinder us in many ways. So I always say it's not ego that is a negative element of who we are. It's untamed ego, or ego that we haven't acknowledged as not being beneficial or not being programmed to work for us, because the ego can totally take over your life, and that's when it becomes something that could really hinder your growth. So your higher self, or your intuition, that leads to elevation, life purpose, expansion, constant growth. Like, it's always there. It's forever. It's that connection that you have to everything in the universe that's within yourself. So it's like your voice of reason, your voice within yourself that leads you to higher and greater things. And it's forever guiding you in the right direction. So when people say, listen to your intuition, your gut feeling, that that knowledge inside that you already have. So that is your intuition, right? And your ego is another part of yourself, but it's more narrow focused, and it's more of a selfish nature, and it's very immediate. So it's very immediate gratification is the ego, and sometimes that gratification can be not good for you, right? Because it's not necessarily leading you to expansion. It's more based on what it wants right now. And so it's almost like the unruly toddler inside, right? For some people, if it's not, tamed enough to grow with you. So your ego can sometimes be mistaken, or, by, your ego can sometimes be mistaken for your intuition, depending on what you're listening to. So there's always like these two voices inside, and I know many people can relate to having this battle in your head where you know what you feel, you know what you think, but then, you might be going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's that, that higher self versus lower self, or the intuition versus your ego message. And when that's mistaken, sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes we've all done it. You might be like, well, maybe this is what I'm feeling right now, because it's very pressing and very urgent, and this is what I think I need right this moment. You start trusting that ego voice more than your true intuition. That's actually going to be leading you to a better direction. So your ego ends up taking over, and your choices, or whoever is in that state of going after gratification that's just frivolous, or that might not be to their benefit in the long run. It's very selfish seeking and gratifying, and it's not, like I said, it's not a bad thing, because we all need to think about ourselves first, all of that stuff. But it's the ego has a very narrow focus, so it doesn't, when we are in that state of allowing the ego to drive us, then we're not seeing the greater picture, we're not seeing the bigger picture, we're only seeing what's right here, right now, and that's all we're concerned with. So if somebody is trusting that element of themselves, and they're going to go after something without actually looking at the entire panorama and to see if this is actually something that would be beneficial for them, that might be something that's an ego-based choice, right? Whereas intuition is, I guess one of my best analogies of intuition would be, think of like playing chess. If any of you play chess, like I play chess. I've played chess since I was a little girl. So I know that in chess, there are numerous things that you have to look at. So there are potential ways to move one piece, and you don't just go for it, because if you go for it, there could be like 5, 6, 7 different ways that you'll be attacked or killed, right? So your intuition, think of it like as knowing all those potential steps, that if you step here, this is coming for you. If you step there, this is coming for you. If you step there, this might be here. So your intuition is what helps you to sit back and look first and see where the dangers are. Your ego doesn't do that. Your ego could care less about the dangers. They just want to go here. So that's where they're going to go. And then what happens, right? Something comes and attacks. So that's why it's really important to cultivate your higher self, so you can listen to your intuition, so you can tame your ego to work for you, so you can choose the things that you are going to be walking toward purposefully, not just because you feel like it at that particular moment, and where something comes along the path that you weren't paying attention to. Because when ego is in the forefront, it what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of quiets or muffles intuition, so you can't really hear it, right? So the more that you allow your ego to take over, the less your intuition will be there, to help you, so you can hear what's within and where you need to be going. So one thing I do want to mention is that you can learn how to listen to your intuition, and you can learn how to quiet your ego. So your ego is based on your programming, and your personal programming is always based on your core beliefs system and what you believe, or think the way things are up to this point. So, and your ego is very much attached to your inner child. So whatever, wherever your inner child was hurt at any particular moment in life, like your ego is usually attached to that, and it stays at that age. So sometimes that might be 4, that might be 14, that might be 10, that might be, it depends. If something happened, and then, so that's usually where it gets stuck emotionally, and it starts to like play havoc when you start growing up from that age, but your ego's stuck there. Like that's like, and it's attached to your emotional body. So you get triggered in certain ways. And I will totally get into the inner child topic in another episode, because it's super important. But I just kind of want to touch on it because the ego, it gets attached there, and it gets attached there based on the program, and also based on whatever happened, usually in our youth, that we never really were able to move past effectively, right? So because of that, it forms all of these assumptions about everything outside of us. So just think about it. If you're 40 years old and, you have something that, this ego aspect of you runs your life a lot of the times, but it is based on something that happened a long time ago. You might not even subconsciously realize that. So now, whenever there's something that triggers you from the past, this ego takes over and says, yep, that's dangerous. We're not going to go near that. Or, yeah, let's go for that because, this looks fun, or whatever it is. But it's based on a very immature mentality, right? So that's why I said the ego is not a bad thing. It's just the untamed ego that could really hurt you. But one way to start to move out of that, to actually recognize it, is to be mindful of everything that you're doing, or every choice that you're going to make. And you can start by cultivating your higher self, and that's by voicing it. So you're acknowledging it out loud, that you recognize that there's these two elements exist inside of you. It's not to say anything bad about the ego, but it's also to say, okay, we're going to work on listening to my higher self and trying to tame and quiet that loud screaming ego, so we can actually start to make those choices to walk in the right direction, not necessarily always in the wrong direction, right? So that starts by voicing your intention, by writing your intention. Writing is very powerful. Whatever is in your head, can stay here. And but when you first start to write your thoughts down, they start to become reality. Even picking up a pen, writing it down, it's like a download from your brain to the paper, and seeing it in front of you could really start to get the ball rolling into how to make what you want a reality, including this. Quieting your mind can also be part of listening to the ego. Now, there's a number of ways you can go about quieting your mind. Meditation is amazing. Initially, if you're not familiar with meditation, I always recommend guided meditation because at least it guides your thoughts step by step. Not being afraid of your thoughts, because a lot of the times we have thousands of thoughts go through our mind every single minute. So most of those sometimes we don't really know where to go with them. Sometimes we get on the wrong train. One really good analogy that I was given when I was going to my meditation circles was to look at your brain as a train station, and there's all of these trains going every which way. You can choose which train to ride on. So you can choose which thought. And let's say you happen to get on the wrong train and you don't like where this thought is taking you. And sometimes we've all been there where we're taken over by all these thoughts, and we start to have horrible visions or imagine bad things, or anyway. So you get on, you can choose to get off. So you can just tell yourself, I don't like this train, I don't like this thought, I'm going to get off. And so I always look at myself as the person in that train station that has the power to remove myself from a train if I don't like where it's going, or the thought if I don't like where it's going. So once you practice that a little bit, you can also learn how to slow down the thoughts or the trains, right? It does take a little bit of practice, but it's really effective to voice your intention to cultivate your higher self, to write things down, to start really paying attention to your thoughts. Your higher self, or your intuition, honestly, you cultivate it the most by walking toward your purpose more every single day, by being grateful and cultivating those good, happy, thankful feelings inside of you, by developing a good, positive spiritual connection to what you believe in your life, by feeding yourself the right foods mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. This is all ways that you can feed your higher self, by being around people that are motivating, by putting out boundaries in your life, by protecting yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And there's numerous ways that you can cultivate your higher self. These are some that I practice and that I do, and not being afraid to remove yourself or remove whatever person, place, thing that is challenging that, or that is going to be dangerous or going to be unsafe or not really on your path. And sometimes that is hard for people to do, because nobody really likes to let go of people that they might like or they might love. But sometimes that is something that you might have to do if being near or around or in the vicinity of certain energy is draining you, hurting you, or leading you to go in the wrong direction where you're trying to go, right? That's a necessity. And that is another way that you help cultivate your higher self or your intuition, because you're basically saying that you are moving and trusting where you need to go, rather than living on temporary gratification or immature mentality and thought process that the ego wants you to continue to live in, right? So you want to change those beliefs within yourself. You want to try to kind of get to the root of where it all started, and all of that can be done by putting in some self-work. So some of these topics that I touched on today, I will cover in other videos and other podcasts because they are important. Today, I just wanted to begin the conversation about your higher self versus your lower self, your ego versus your intuition, and how to begin to listen to your intuition more and quiet the ego more to be able to get on the path that you need to go.